Hey guys, what is up? Lord Nick here, bringing you another episode of the Dangerous Game Podcast, the podcast about League of Legends. And guess what, guys? This week, I'm going to be talking about build paths and wave management. These are two very separate topics, but I believe the two of them do go hand in hand quite often. Each one kind of has a different bit of information to each of them. They don't really do a lot of the same things, but they're generally applied in the same category. If you don't know how to build, but you know how to manage your waves, it doesn't matter that you're gaining a gold advantage via, you know, managing waves and getting a lot of money if you can't build properly. But if you know how to build but you can't manage waves, you're going to be behind all the time and you're not going to gain the money to build properly. So we're going to be touching up on both of those. And the primary things, guys, like I'm going to be trying to go over in this video, we're going to be talking about like start items. For the build path part of it, we're going to be talking about start items, how you need to approach build paths when you're ahead and when you're behind, and then also looking at how does your build path change in situational games. In different situations, like what are situational items you need to be changing out. Now, this is going to be kind of a broad guide, and I'm going to be using ADCs as the primary example for this. But if we're looking at it as a whole, most of the things I'm going to be talking about kind of stand in the same way. You're not going to use the same items, but we're going to use the same general principles. Also, we're going to talk about wave management. When do you need to be pushing your waves out? Do you follow up your waves to a tower? How do you get ahead in a lane that you are losing in the 2v2 matchup if you're in bot lane or if you're losing in the 1v1 up in top or mid? How do you, do this? Also, we'll talk a little bit about jungle creep management in this category as well, due to the fact that it is kind of a wave management in and of itself, and the junglers themselves become responsible for wave management of their side lanes as much as the primaries in those roles. So to start it off, guys, we're going to be talking about knowing your start item. So, start items. Everybody can tell me them. There's three primary start items that everybody knows of, and there's also two secondary ones that have popped up in the past couple of years. But the three everybody knows of are the Doran's items, Doran's Blade, Doran's Shield, and Doran's Ring. These are the standard start items for pretty much everybody. These are the simple ones you need to kind of know and how they're used. Really, they're all very simple. Oh, I need to survive the lane more. I'm going with the shield. I'm not going to be fighting people I'm going to try to avoid being killed as often. I might not be the best at trading back, and so that being the case, I'm not looking to do a lot of fights, but I'm looking to survive while I'm farming. So the shield's probably the route to go. Tankier individuals also take the shield just because it synergizes with what tanks want to do. They want to heal up, they want to have a lot of health, and they want to take less damage. So overall, this is just a good item for tanks. You also have the ring, which is going to be better for people who are doing magic damage, as it gives you ability power, and then it gives you returns on your. It increases your mana regen per second, which is just super useful for being able to sustain and hold off in a lane, and farm for a long time, and potentially fight if you're an AP individual. Last one is Doran's Blade. This is going to be used on AD champions who are trying to get an edge up in the lane. You're somebody who is trying to fight, but you want to be a little bit safer than taking like a long sword. And so this one gives you a bit of AD, some HP, and a bit of lifesteal. So all these items are super useful, right? You also, of course, have the corrupting potion that you see people take. You also have the, oh shoot, I cannot think of the other ring. Well, you know the ring, guys. It builds into a Mejia Soul Stealer. It's about getting stacks. It's an aggressive item for people who are building AP that think that they're going to be able to kill the opponent a lot, or for people who want to be getting potions more, and it makes potions and elixirs last longer, like Singed. You'll, of course, also have the jungle start items, but those ones are in front of their video. What we're talking about specifically in this one is going to be about build paths in general for laners. If you guys want to hear more about the jungle build paths and jungle pathing in general, that is a much more in-depth concept. I'm very familiar with it, and we could go into it in another video, so leave a comment below if you're interested in something like that. But for today, we'll be talking about laning items. So, what are each of these items? You know now what each of these three core items offer, but is there other options for starting? And yes, there is. And based off of different seasons have been what those start items look like. Way back in the day, you used to get 10 red pots or, 5 red pots, 5 blue pots, and you'd go in the lane. FYI, blue pots were the same thing for the red pot potions that heal you, except they healed your mana. Oh, cool. And this was the initial start items way back in the day. Exception would be like supports who take gold per second items like Heart of Gold and some old items like that, which everybody pretty much started with too, because then you just gain more gold. Is super good. Either way, items have changed throughout League's conception, and nowadays the standard ones you see are going to be those three items listed before. The three Doran's items are the listed ones, but can you go about changing that up? How would you do that, and why would you do that? So, for instance, in the ADCs, I have oftentimes on Jhin, I will change it up depending on what I want to do. If I want to farm a lot in the game, I'll be taking a Doran's ring. And a lot of people will be like, well, why would you do that on Jhin? And well, with Jhin specifically, you take the Doran's ring because you want the mana sustain so that you can farm with your Q more. His Q has an AP ratio on it. On top of that, the mana regen just allows you to spam it more, which is super useful on him. Now, most other ADCs wouldn't be doing that, but they could take a Doran's shield in place of the Doran's blade. And the reason they would do this is because they know that they're not going to do terribly well in the early game fights, so they need something that would keep them alive longer, make them take less damage, heal up some more, kind of stay alive in the lane so they can get past laning phase to win. It's a simple concept of changing up based off of the style of your champion, and you got to kind of understand how you are playing. This applies to all lanes, guys. Mid laners, they don't generally take the shield, but if they feel like they're in a bad matchup, they'll take a corrupting potion instead. This gives them a lot more health sustain, gives them mana sustain, and gives them a little bit of extra damage on hitting people while the potion is effective. So overall, just depending on your playstyle of how you want to do it. Now that being said, the corrupting potion is a much more aggressive, safe item, I guess is the way to put it, because it allows you to trade better with your opponents. So if you know they for a fact are going with the ring and they don't have a very strong early game, you can take the corrupting potion, which allows you to be safe and take bigger trades with them because they can't heal up as much. So there's different strategies you could approach with it. Certain items, while used for defensive purposes, can also be used in offensive ways. You just have to think about it, and it takes a lot more strategy, and it's going to be a lot more situational per game. Now, as I did also mention on Jhin, I've also taken a longsword, but that also is determined by what your start item is going to be, guys. So, for instance, if you were going a lethality build on an ADC or an AD mid or AD top laner, and you want to go lethality first item, what you could do is you could take longsword and 3 potions. Now, you don't have the effective healing that Doran's blade gives you, or the protection that Doran's shield allots you. But what it does do, sorry, still coughing, is that it allows you to get to your item faster. That item spike will be hitting a lot sooner than if you'd taken one of these start items. Now, with that, you can start looking at, okay, but what benefit other than that does it have? Well, you also have 3 potions, which means you can try to trade. What you're going to be looking to do is attacking more. Yeah, that seems weird, right? Like, well, don't you want the blade, which gives you lifesteal, to attack more? No, the blade is more effective for a farming tool and a potential trade tool. The problem is a longsword doesn't give you sustain, so you don't want to be sitting back and farming with that because then your opponent gets to poke you or get to declare the fights. You want to be more aggressive. You want to set up the fights and force your opponent on the back foot. Once you have that, this is where wave management and build order start actually mattering a little bit, right? Because now you have to be managing how your wave's pushing into them or how their wave's pushing into you. So if you get the wave pushing into you, but you have them fearing to fight you, that means you can then start doing what is called freezing a wave. This is part of the wave management part. You're going to see that they're going to interchange between the two quite a bit in this video. So at this point, freezing the wave means you have control of the lane. You are pressuring them, but it is pushed towards your tower. Not to your tower, but near your tower, so that they have to go up farther. This then allows your jungler to know, oh, that's a free gank if ever they actually decide to push up. And if you're already winning the trades, They can't actively do that. They have to give it up until they get a jungle assistance. But you're already in a safe position. If their jungler comes to gank you, cool. Their person gets to farm a bit, but they have to push into you. Their wave's already pushing towards you. Your whole purpose of freezing the wave there is that you're giving them a slightly larger wave that's then holding there. And the only damage you're taking is every now and then you might have to take a little bit of damage from minions to hold the minions about where they are so your minions meet them again. This is a simple wave management trick that can be used to shut out your opponent early on, but this does require you to get a much more aggressive early start. So this is where a lot of people who are playing like a Lowy or maybe Jax or something, they usually take Corrupting Potion, but some of them might take a Longsword in place of this to get that extra AD spike so that they can do that, go back, get an early item spike, and usually a Corrupting Potion on that next back, and then when they come back, they can freeze that wave, and your opponent can't do much. They've already been forced off of the first wave, so they're a little bit behind anyways. If you push your wave to tower, it's going to reset them in the middle, and at this point, all you got to do is let them take a few of the minions, and then punish them for doing it. Don't focus on your own farm, but punish them. This is where your build order changes. This is where your wave management comes into play. And this allows you to start gaining some power back in this lane. Yes, you are not getting the pushing power here, but you are starving your opponent. It's going to be tilting to your opponent, it's going to starve them, and it's going to force their jungler to have to do something they might not have done. This is an effective strategy in the 1v1 lanes. You can do it in top, you can do it in mid. Now, it used to be okay in the bot lanes. The problem is that now that the supports have become more active than they used to be, there's a lot more you can do to stop a freeze in the bot lane, but this does require synergy between you and your support. So if you are against a duo queued bot lane, might not be the best of ideas. If you're against two individuals, it might be okay. If you know that you can abuse the crap out of the enemy support, for instance, they're playing Sona, and you want to freeze the wave back towards your tower, that's real easy. You have them start pushing into you, because Sona will start trying to poke you early on. Just kind of try to bait out her Qs. Don't get hit by them if you can, stuff like that. And this will work for most APs as well. And they start hitting the wave. Now, this is going to make their ADC upset because their ADC is now missing some of their farm due to their support. On top of that, if you manage it correctly, you could have their wave pushing into you, you freeze it outside of your tower, and anytime they come up to harass you, you all in on them. Now, mind you, you have to be wary of their minion wave. When you all in on them, go into a bush that they're in. It will pull off some of the minions, but as long as you position it correctly, it won't get all of them. It will force them to back up, and many times lesser experienced people, and in the lower elos, they'll just back off. They don't try to keep the fight up. They think they're going to lose because you're being aggressive. Just showing a sign of force can force people off and give you the advantage here. Now, in higher elos, I recommend avoiding doing something like that. People will understand this, and they understand wave management as well. They'll either do one of a couple things. They'll avoid fighting you and let you just freeze it there, whatever, and they'll just go start stealing your opponent, your jungler's jungle, which you have to peel off and go help, which will then unfreeze the wave. The second thing they might do is take their own jungle or start ganking other lanes, which then allows you to start pushing and trying to get tower pressure, which isn't bad overall, but if they manage to get kills and still make it back to catch that wave you're now pushing into their tower, you're going to be at a deficit. They can turn it around. So this is a riskier strategy as you go higher, but this is a way of understanding the basic concepts of why you might want to change your early build path. On top of that, now let's move on into later in the game. Let's avoid this early laning phase of wave management and build pathing to kind of talk about the mid game here, right? So let's say you come out of the lane and you're ahead. What do you build? Now, depending on what champion you are, you're going to build aggressively. If you are a tank champion, what you want is, of course, you're going to want like something like a Sunfire Cape. That's an aggressive tank item, right? This is an item that gives you more damage when you're in fights. So if you're already thinking you're ahead here, you kind of go for that. Now, if you are behind, what are you doing? You're going to be building either MR or armor based off of what your opponent is playing. So whatever your lane partner is will usually determine the boots you're going, unless you're thinking far enough ahead to team fights. But the problem is, boots are very integral for winning you the lane, oddly enough. When you're looking at it, sorry, if you're against an AD matchup, you're going to want Ninja Tabby. Even if they don't have a lot of AD elsewhere in the map, you need to make sure you're not getting dumpstered in the lane, so you have to go Ninja Tabby early. Now, much later in the game, when you're closer to finishing your build, if you don't have enough money to finish your build, but you do to switch boots, you could try to switch into the better boots, but like usually your lane is going to determine what boots you go. If they're AP damage dealer, you want to go the magic resist boots. You want to go into your Mercury treads, and if they're an AD damage dealer, you want to go to your ninja tabbies. So your boot path will change depending on your opponents. Next up, your overall item pathing should change too. Oh, my opponent here likes to deal a lot of burst damage. So what is an item you can build? Well, even if they're not AP, one of the first things you can build is a part of an item, a catalyst, some might call it. The Catalyst of Ages is a super useful item. I believe that's the name of it. Either way, it builds into Rod of Ages, and it builds into the Abyssal Mask. And the reason this one key little item is important, every time you take damage, you gain back a lot more mana. Every time you expend mana on a spell, depending on the amount of mana spent, you then gain X amount of health back. So it's a basically infinite sustain item. Not truly infinite, but it's pretty close for most champions. So what does this item give you? This item gives you the ability to go up there. You could take a really kind of rough trick, but manage to get some farm. As long as you have Corrupting Potion as well, you have a little bit of damage that you get to apply, and you get better healing, and overall you just have better sustain. This will allow you to survive better, even if you're not going to build it into an Abyssal later, because most champions can. Mind you, the Abyssal's second ability of, everybody has increased magic damage may not always apply to you, but this is a safe item. This is specifically still talking about tanks, guys. This is an item all tanks can get, and you don't have to finish it. That is another big thing about the build path, guys. Just because you built the piece to an item does not mean you have to finish said item. Yes, your gold value might go down because you have to sell that item later and start building what you actually want to build. But mind you, if it gives you situational advantages for a good amount of the game, feel free to buy a smaller, non-complete full item. Do it. It helps you out. Like, you could take I'm against an AD matchup, but they're liking to do burst, not sustain damage. So here's what you'll probably want to do. You want to get yourself a Glacial Shroud. Guess what? It gives you cooldown reduction, gives you armor, gives you mana, allows you to do a lot more things. And a Catalyst. These two items together make you very, very good against an AD damage dealer. You get more cooldown reduction from one, you get sustain of mana and health from the other, and then just a bonus bit of mana from both, and a bonus bit of health from one. And then you can go Ninja Tabby, or if you think that, hey, maybe later in the game I'm going to need Merc Treads more, you now have two items set up that help you survive in the laning phase. So you now can build whatever boots you think you're going to need throughout the game. Oh, they don't have a lot of CC, so Merc Treads aren't that great. They don't have a lot of AP, Merc Treads aren't that great. But they do have a decent amount of slows. Hey, maybe I want Swifties to reduce their slows by a ridiculous proportion. Stuff like that. This also is kind of what goes behind situational items. You got to change your items to the game you're in. They have a lot of magic damage, you're going to want Merc Treads. They don't have a lot of magic damage, you're going to want Ninja Tabby. If they don't really have a lot of damage, then really it's kind of up in the air as to what you do there. But, it's highly doubtful they're going to have 5 tanks on their team unless it's a full tank meta. And even then, still highly doubtful. But knowing how to change your build path is super important. Each champion has a separate build path you can go, and there's a standard one you'll find online for each champion that you play. Now, changing it is going to be relative to you, and that's a skill that you're going to have to pick up over time on your own. I'm trying to describe it to my best of my abilities, but it's reading the champions you're against. And that's where League of Legends is really a more of a macro game than people like to give it credit for. There's a lot of small decision-making things within the game that require this macro decision. If you're not familiar with the term macro or micro, I will be using them throughout the rest of this video. Please go check out my second episode of the Dangerous Game podcast about terminology. I go a little bit more in depth about the two, but a quick description of them would be right now. Micro is going to be about your mechanics of the champion. How good are you at doing flashy plays and making this champion just dominate other people? Macro, on the other hand, is about knowledge around the map. How do you manage waves? How do you change your item paths? How do you command your team to be able to go to Baron at the right times? When do you go for Dragon? Knowing situational timing, awareness, vision, all these things that are kind of not to do with fighting is considered a macro sense. Now, this is also applied to build path. Build path is a macro skill. And a lot of people just kind of don't understand it. They learn it, they don't understand it. But understanding build path is a big part of becoming a better player. So pros have a good idea of the micro, and when you're looking at it, all you're looking at is their micro sense. How good are they at this game? How great are they at killing people? You're not necessarily looking at, well, why is he going this on his build path? You're just like, that's the build he goes, that's the build we all need to go. You're not looking at, okay, he's going a lot of MR like a Mercurial Scimitar here because there's a lot of CC on their team and a lot of AP. No, you're just looking at what the pros build and you're going to copy that because the pro knows what they're doing. It's a kind of it's kind of a way of, learning it without actually learning it. So actually breaking down and looking at it is going to be helpful for you in the future. Now, if you're looking for specific items of like, Nick, when do I build Spirit Visage? Or Nick, when do I build these things? You just got to look at the enemy team. Are you ahead? Yes. Okay. Do you have. If you are ahead, then you want to keep building items that will keep you ahead. What it means by that, if you are a carry style champion, or even if you're a tank style champion, you want to keep things that will keep spiking your damage and keep you being the primary focus of the enemy team. For instance, in an ADC sense, oh, I'm ahead and I already have my Essence Reaver. Well, what is your next item in this build path? Well, usually it's insert rapid fire cannon. Well, will that rapid fire cannon continuously keep you ahead? In most cases, it will be a yes. In some cases, it might be a no. For instance, on Jin, it could be a yes, but if they're not actively threatening you from being able to jump in at a distance on you, then rapid fire is not all that great. Sure, it gives you some potential chase down potential and it gives you some movement speed, but it's not like super integral right there. You could go for your second IE next, so you have two IEs before you get your rapid fire. And in other situations, you are slightly behind. You do happen to have had your IE. What do you want next? You want a rapid fire. This is a safer item. It gives you the crit chance still. It gives you the attack speed, which allows you to move faster when you crit. And it gives you an additional extra range. Now, depending on your situation, it will change as to what your second item should be. And you should always have this kind of in mind. This is why a lot of people one trick one champion. Because you do have to know a lot to get better at this game, guys. The idea of build paths is not that you have one set build path for every game. Your build path has a general build path. You want to go, for instance, on Jin. My general Jin build path involves an IE, Swifty Boots, a rapid fire cannon, second IE into a Last Whisper, possibly most of the time because there's somebody that usually has a lot of heals, so we end up going Mortal Reminder, and then finish it all off with with either another IE or another like a Static Shiv or maybe a Storm Razor to top it all off. Now, mind you, this will change depending on my games. My boots might change to the Mercury treads because I need to be able to survive CC and get out of CC more. They might change to Ninja Tabby because they have a ton of assassins that are just trying to burst me out. My last crit item might change to a GA, or maybe my last whisper changes to a GA because of these, AD burst people, and they're not building a lot of armor, but I need to survive them, so we go to a GA. Or maybe they build a lot of AP burst, and so I build a Mercurial Scimitar. Your items are going to change depending on who you are playing against and the situations you are in. If you are ahead, you want to keep items that will keep you snowballing ahead. If you are behind, you want items that will keep you safe, but still give you enough of a power spike to be effective in the game. So, when behind, oh, they're building really tanky. Cool. I happen to have my IE. Let me build the last whisper part of my Mortal Reminder or Lord Dominic's or whatever I'm going to need that for, just to get some armor pen and some extra damage. It's only $14.50. It's a very good gold investment, right? Like, it's a small gold investment that gives you ways around their armor and more damage, which will allow you to start playing it back. Now, you do have to play safer, but it gives you things that will allow you to punish them if they overextend. So you have to look at things that way. It's a much more macro understanding of it. Now, to kind of finish this video off, I feel like we've talked enough about your build order, how to build, where you build, what do you need to do when you're ahead, when you're behind. When you're behind, you need to build items that will still give you a spike that allow you to be more defensive. When ahead, you need to build items that are aggressively getting you ahead, that keep you having your lead, that allow you to keep applying pressure. The last other thing for pressure is wave management. A lot of people struggle with the idea of how do you manage a wave. So, say your first tower is gone. The wave is pushing up. It hasn't quite hit your second tower yet. What do? So you eliminate all the minions in that wave. The minions that are left in your wave, you meet up to the next wave, you eliminate it, and then you back off. Here's why. That first wave is going to be whatever collective group of previous waves there were. If you meet them when a fresh wave is coming from your wave and it meets outside that tower, that will usually happen. If you meet them and your wave is still fresh, that means you kill that wave that's there, you help clear the next wave, you can leave 1 or 2 minions behind on that one if you do, as long as your wave still has more minions than it, and your wave will start pushing for itself. The reason why is because your wave is now starting to build up. Another wave should be coming out of your nexus about that time that you're finishing up that second wave. It could already almost be to your second tower. It'll meet up with the remainder of the first wave and start pushing together. And now you have a bigger wave that is starting to push together. And because they outnumber the other waves, they will start getting bigger as your next waves will start meeting together. And eventually you'll have this giant wave of minions crashing into your enemy tower. This allows your enemies, and if your enemies aren't paying attention to this, this gives you a lot of pressure on that side of the map because they have to start answering it because these minions are going to just start killing their towers. So, this is generally a concept of wave management post lane. This is something that a lot of people struggle with. It's not a very difficult concept, but it is kind of difficult if you don't know why it does these things. So, standard minions, when they first spawn, the very first wave that spawns, they will always meet in the center of the center. Now, knowing this, blue minions generally win on the top side, and red minions generally win on the bot side, and it's a 50-50 as to who wins in the mid. And this is just because there are certain things that could change slightly each game that will affect when they hit there, but this is the general idea of how it happens, and this is what gives, symmetrical balance in the game. One side is ahead on the top side, the other side's ahead on the bottom side. So pressure will naturally be going for certain teams in certain areas. And it's just the curvature of how the map is built, because it is built at a slight diamond angle. This is just how they happen to get there. One wave gets there slightly faster than the other one takes a little bit more time. Because of how they meet, the one wave gets to get a little bit more damage on the first wave before it happens. So this is just how it happens because of the diamond shape of it. And if that is the case, you need to know what side you are on and how you can affect it. Early on in game, in lane, we've already talked about freezing being a tactic. Now hard shoving is another tactic. You don't always want to hard shove when the opponent's in the lane, unless they are very bad at clearing wave. They have single target damage. They don't have a lot of wave clear early on. Then pushing into them is not a bad idea. It forces them under tower. They're going to miss some of their minions. They're going to get some of them, and if they're really good at wave management under tower, they can also potentially get almost all of them. But if you pressure it properly, we pressure it so that my next wave hits your wave right outside of your tower. My minions get hurt a bit and it goes under the tower. Now you're not going to be able to effectively clear it as well. Now, this is better for low elos. As you get higher up, people will be able to manage this still relatively, but it will still put them behind slightly. The effect just won't be as great as it will be in the lower elos. But this is a simple wave management tool. The problem with this is you also need to make sure you're putting out wards. This is another macro mechanic that you need to work together. You see why there's certain individual things that break down in this game. If you're putting out wards, it alerts you when the enemy jungler is coming, and it tells you when you have to give up pressure. When there are enough people to threaten you, you need to give up pressure. Now, if you're getting camped and they have tons of pressure on you, one of the best things you can do is actually leaving there potentially and helping another lane. This does not mean you have to force a fight, but showing yourself there will give the other lane some pressure and might pull your laner down, might pull the jungler away from your lane, which then allows you to go back to your lane and catch whatever's at your tower, because most people will start pushing once they realize you're gone. These are some things that you can learn and manipulate the other players and the minions themselves. Now, when your enemy is out of the lane, you should be trying to push to their tower. Big reasons. One, you could try to get some tower plating. Two, if you know you can't, like they just backed and they'll probably be back soon, and you can't maybe get one tower plate, what you do is you push all your wave into their tower. If another wave is hitting their tower at that time, like their wave, you kill that wave off if you can. Stop focusing the tower, kill that wave off if you can, because it will allow your minions to die to the tower, and you get to collect some of those minions, and then you back. You go back to the far side of the lane and you back. Because by the time they're getting to their tower, they're going to have missed most of the first wave, if not all of the first wave, and they could catch some of the second wave. And this will allow you to gain a slight gold advantage. Even if all they're catching is the caster minions, like say they get back and all the melee minions are dead, that's actually a big favor in your part. If you realize caster minions give you a lot less gold than the melee minions. So if all your melee minions die at the tower, you still have accrued a better win. Even if it says, oh, your minions and their minions are very close, if all they're catching is caster minions and you're getting to get all their melee minions and most of their caster minions, you're going to be ahead, even if they are catching all your caster minions and they miss all the melees. So you just got to kind of understand those things too. You have to understand the principles of how are you going to make more money off of this, how are you going to deny them money. And that's the big part of wave management, is just learning the difference between, do I continuously push this, do I just push this into their tower. And it's going to differ in each game. But with the fundamentals of knowing when you push, of, okay, they're out of the lane, this is when we should push. Oh, I have no vision on 4 people of their team, I shouldn't be pushing. It's simple concepts that you have to pick up on. Oh, I've lost vision of people, I need to back off. Oh, I know they're coming for me, but I can get this tower. Is your death worth the trade? Are you 0-4 and you can get the tower and they'll kill you and get the 5th kill? Then maybe you should do that. Trade that tower, get that, and this will be first tower, get the first tower for your team. Even if they kill you, you're not worth that much gold. You haven't reset that much gold. Oh, I have a bounty and 4 people are coming to kill me, I could get first tower. Don't do it. That gives them a bounty, and even though you get first tower, they get a bounty for it. Don't do it. Like, you got to understand risk management as well as wave management, and this is what generally will attribute to wave management. It's kind of a gamble, right? Like, you are betting, and your chips are how many minions are left on the enemy team, how many are you leaving there, how are you doing this. Last hitting is another thing about wave management, but last hitting is a topic all its own. We could probably talk about that in a different video, and most of you should know what last hitting is. It's a basic concept of you're waiting until they're low enough so your auto attack kills them. Now, if you are waiting until that last bit of health of theirs is dead, your minions are killing it off, and you kill it on the last bit of health, this will cause your wave to not push as much. If you are hitting that minion a couple of times and then last hitting it, it will cause your lane to push. So this is another tactic of how you get it to push towards you and not push towards you. Just last hit opposed to knocking down its health and hitting it on the last tick of its health. There is a slight difference there. That is a difference between the terminology, and that's a way to get it pushing for you. Or if you don't want it to push, you just wait until they're about to die and steal the kill from other minions. That's a way of getting it to push into you sometimes. Alright guys, I feel like this is a sufficient pause point for this. I feel like we've covered a decent portion of wave management and possibly build paths, and I know this is more of a generalized video. There's no real big specifics in this one. If you want more specifics on individual parts of this, please please leave me a message below in the comments, PM me on Discord, maybe stop by my Twitch and be like, hey, can you talk to me about this today? Or if you guys want a video on it, I'll make a video later this week about it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate every single one of you. And hopefully I'll see you guys next week in next podcast episode. And as always, everybody, I hope you all have yourself a wonderful, wonderful day.